Go and get a pen, Elizabeth. I think there's some poetry coming on. Happened that we've met before. Walk in through the crystal door. You're walking now on crystal floor. Something you've not done before. I saw this woman with her back towards me, and I was being drawn like a magnet to her. It was Elizabeth.
But the name Heart Star came to me before that was its energy. Oh my gosh, this energy is so powerful. A woman in New Jersey was asked to find caregivers, caretakers, guardians for these 8 small crystal skulls that were found in caves in the Himalayas by a man who was a collector of ancient relics. So she used to get relics from him. She collected jade. So he used to get jade, you know, and this woman named Linda Frisch, she also goes by Alea, he asked her. He not only found 8 small Himalayan crystal skulls, that he had gotten psychic messages that he needed to go to these caves in the Himalayas, right on the border of China and Tibet, and where he found these 8 small ones, plus 14 large that look very different than the 8 small ones. But he felt to take the large ones, and he actually brought them to Sedona. I had no idea because I was so not into crystal skulls. You know, when the Mitchell Hedges used to come here, Anna Mitchell's, I just never really, you know, it's like I'd hear about them and I'd go, it's not my thing.
I picked up a book, and the book said something about crystal skulls. I had never heard of a crystal skull. I didn't know such a thing existed. Crystal skulls for me started one night when Elizabeth rang me up. She was in Sedona here, and I was at home, and she said, "Hi, I can't sleep." What's the matter? She said, "A strange thing's happened. Somebody brought me this little crystal skull, and it's giving off such a light, I can't sleep."
I woke up in the middle of the night, and I never felt anything like the experience I had where I don't know how to describe it except feeling like I was linked to the stars, to Source.
I realized as she was talking that this crystal skull had something to say to me. This little skull said, "You are old and so am I. Mystic bonds now bind us." How did it go?
We have the poem in the book, The Crystal Skull Messenger, which tells the whole story.
But that's how the poetry started, absolutely to my amazement, over the phone. And it then continued in various ways, giving instructions through poetry.
And for 2 years, we met regularly in Glastonbury every week. And every week, Thelma would bring through amazing channeled messages from Heart Star. Blessed Avalon, oh
blessed Avalon.
Oh, beating heart of...
Oh, beating heart of gold, you are so very treasured. Oh, beating heart of love, you are so very treasured, both here and up above.
Yeah. The ending is so beautiful of that poem. So it was poems like that that would come through in the Glastonbury Heart Star meditation circle. They all had to do with going to the Glastonbury Abbey, where the legend is that Joseph of Arimathea, Christ's uncle, was a mined tin from Cornwall and lead from the Mendips near Glastonbury, and Glastonbury then was there were 7 islands, and so the ships could come. They'd come on the ships, land, and he'd walk up this hill, and he was Joseph Arimathea brought Christ when he was a child, And he knew the Druids. The Druids and the Celtic people loved them. And there's even proof that tin from England is in Jerusalem. After the crucifixion, Joseph of Arimathea, Mary Magdalene, and Mother Mary and some of the disciples went on the ship, and that's where Mary Magdalene stayed in the south of France. That's why the whole energy of the Magdalene energy in France, and a lot of them went on to England because Joseph of Arimathea knew the Druids so well, and they gave him this land which became Glastonbury Abbey. So that was really the cradle of Christianity, was in Glastonbury, in this abbey ground. But it had become so destroyed in all this medieval time.
Yes.
You know.
I'd love to do the poem as far as I can remember it. A poem came through. The mists across the river float, and in the mist there is a boat. It carries holy men of yore, sailing to the other shore. They sail because they have a task. What it is may not be asked, but they hold the Holy Grail. That is why they have to sail. I have been in contact with the Mitchell Hedges skull, and when I met it, he tells me to explore the rooms which are in his head on either side. In room 1, it was stacked with the templates of every type of crystal and jewel you could imagine, from the floor to the ceiling. Room 2, down the corridor, room 2, opened into a vast space. But as I approached room 3, the skull said, "Look very carefully." And this room will be difficult to open because it leads to the past. And so I pushed against this door, and a great waft of ancient, that old smell of tombs or shut up places. There was a great waft of ancientness came as I opened the door, and to my surprise there was a wooden shelf about halfway up the room, and on the shelf there were lots of skulls. And I was told, look very carefully and choose one for yourself. So I examined each skull and went along, and then I saw Yangtze, and she was sitting this way round, and I recognized her immediately. I said, "That's the one, that's my skull." But I'd only seen her on a psychic level. And the weeks went by, and the weeks went by, and the weeks went by, and then Elizabeth said that she'd like me to go to this conference. So off I trotted and opened the door to the crystal room where everyone had their skulls, and the ancient skulls were on a sheepskin rug, and there was Yangtze. And I couldn't believe my eyes. I rushed towards her and picked her up and said, there's my skull, there's Yangtze. And there she was in form, having only seen her on the psychic level.
I had this big red shawl in my backpack that I took out and I put on the back of my car, not remembering that I had Heartstar wrapped in my shawl, and he fell out. He was wrapped up very well in a pouch, but I picked him up from the parking lot, and I could feel that he was in at least two pieces. I opened up the pouch that Heartstar was in, and I held Heartstar, and it was two perfect pieces. So I was holding him in two pieces, and the message was, don't get attached to me, to this form, to this crystal skull, to anything. It's all consciousness. Doesn't matter if I'm in a million zillion pieces. I was like, oh, okay. Got it. Yangtze was not Thelma's at that time. It was a man named Moonhawk is his native name, Gary Butler.
Hello, my name is Gary Butler. I'm the carver of the Blue Star Maiden and the Pololican.
I immediately emailed Gary Butler, Moonhawk, because he said this crystal skull appeared in front of him in meditation and said, I was destroyed when the Spanish came and destroyed and took everything. You are to carve me, and I am to have a removable jaw like the Mitchell Hedges skull.
To my knowledge and understanding, the singing skulls were named so simply because they were carved with their jaws able to move. A moving jaw allows the skull to appear to be singing. That is one explanation, and it is a beautiful one. Skulls like the Mitchell Hedges skull, which are carved very close to human anatomically correct, have a moving jaw. The jaw is a very key part to the singing skull, as the jaw allows there to be a true appearance of singing. But there is actually more to it. The lower jaw, in and of itself, is like a tuning fork. There can be a vibration that takes place within this. I can show this with the skull that I carved, the Pololican. The Pololican is a carved quartz crystal skull made from one piece of optic clear quartz, carved against the grain without regard to the grain. It is carved in exactly the same way as the Mitchell Hedges skull.
Well, he had never carved crystal or a crystal skull ever before, but he knew that he had to do it, and it took him 3 years to carve one of the most beautiful crystal skulls I've ever seen. When it was sitting next to the Mitchell Hedges, to me it was even more powerful, I have to say.
When the jaw moves in a crystal skull, it is a fragile thing because the jaw itself weighs very little compared to the weight of the true cranium. The top of the skull, the cranium, is very heavy. So when a jaw is carved, it can be very fragile, especially if it's carved anatomically correct, with the teeth done precisely so that they match that of the true bone lower jaw. It can be a very fragile thing, but can also be a very magical thing.
Incredible. So he was the one that I thought, and I emailed him, and I just said, you're the only one that I can think of that I would even trust to put Heartstar together.
The crystals that rest on the altar of the Blue Star Maiden take on an added feature. When they have been on the altar for a few years, not only do they have a chime, but they sing. They have a continuous vibration, just like a tuning fork, that allows the sound to continue. When crystal is struck, it creates a vibration. If a jawbone were made out of quartz crystal and it was struck, it would also vibrate, which is part of the problem with carving the lower jaw separate, because when it vibrates, it can break. The Pololican's lower jaw has a beautiful, soft sound to it. It is a true crystal tone that comes from it. Thus, the lower jaw sings. When crystal is carved into bone, it allows the crystal energies to come together into one place. Therefore, the Palulakan is a singing skull.
And then I spoke to Gary, and he said, I had a dream, and Heartstar came and said, you will be able to put me back together, and when you do, a new star will form. So he said, so send Heartstar to me.
Well,
So it was 3.5 years after Heartstar came that she connected with Yangtze.
well, I was just so amazed to see her in form.
Right.
And Gary recognized there was a connection, and so he sent her to me, didn't he?
He emailed me and he said, Yangtze and Heartstar have been linking up, and Yangtze wants to come with Heartstar and spend time with Thelma. So I'm going to not only send Heartstar, but I'm sending Yangtze to be with Thelma, and when you come back to Sedona, then you can send Yangtze back to me, so Thelma can spend all this time with Yangtze. And then it was a few months later, and we found out he had passed away. He had passed. And that's why we couldn't get in touch with him. Because we were trying to send Yangtze back to him.
Yeah. So
Now he was married, and
I was in great dilemma as to what to do, because I knew that spiritually Yangtze was supposed to be with me, but on a material level she didn't belong to me, she belonged to the wife's family. So
you got a message directly from Gary.
Yes, that's right. I had a poem from Gary on the other side. I come to you from the other side and want you now to hear my song of pain and sadness that really brought me here. I lost the sense of light divine that once was strong, that once was mine. Yangtze is your darling now. She's where she's meant to be. But when I arrived at this conference, there was a card from the wife saying, I will collect Yangtze tomorrow. Or words to that effect. It was very powerful. And I was torn in half. I didn't know what to do. So I quietened my mind and consulted with Heartstar. And Heartstar said, write to this woman full of love. Find all the love you can in your heart and write to her. And tell her that Gary has sent Yangtze to you 3 times altogether, that she's meant to be with me, that I recognize that she has material rights, but know that I have the spiritual rights.
You got a card, that's what it was. You got a card from her acknowledging that she knew that that was the truth.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah.
At this point, and tell about the poem from the
Yes.
engraving on the wall. I was told to put my hand on it, which I did. What came through was the blood that flowed at Calvary is flowing still today. The heart that broke at Calvary was the price he had to pay. Throughout the years, those precious tears have flowed to heal us all. And then there was a connection with Mary, and the energy from the Virgin Mary fused with the energy of Christ. It was the same energy. And It went on, Blessed Maria, radiant still, your blessings on us pour, for we are little children, and you the queen of all. And the healing work goes on. I should explain that I've done spiritual healing for more than 50 years. I was a trained psychic and trained in London for about 12 years. My name is Thelma Daisy Moran, with an E, which is unusual. And my age is a mere 92, plus 20, still hidden away. I still feel 20 years old inside. Yanks has been very naughty. She says, oh dearie me, it's time that you, dear, had some tea.